Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 69. He's Dave Bryan, I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us for this Wednesday show. Steelers Nation, a little bit later than usual. Apologize for that, but we wanted to wait until after Mike Tomlin's year-end press conference to hear what he had to say, react to it, instead of waiting for Friday's show. So that is the reason why this episode's coming out a little bit later than usual. Think it's worth the wait. And as always, Dave Bryan, how you doing?
Yeah, let's make it worth their wait today. I feel a little bit better this morning. Been sick last couple of days. Some of the stuff that was coming across the Twitter machine early this morning, I felt like Todd Haley when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs there pregame, jumping up and down. I couldn't wait to do this podcast. So now that everybody has that vision in their head, how do we proceed?
Well, let's proceed with some of that news that got you all hot and bothered over there, Dave, this morning. And as quickly as the story came about, it's basically been quashed at this point. But there was a report from, I believe his name is Mike Stone, local radio station in Detroit, that out of the blue, basically it said that the Lions had made an aggressive offer to the Steelers GM Kevin Colbert, trying to hire him. Unless the Steelers offered to, match that offer, had some sort of healthy counteroffer, Colbert was going to leave to Detroit. Now, there had been rumors couple weeks ago from Jason Luck-and-4, the Lions really liked Colbert, would love to have him as their GM, but the odds of that were extremely remote. So this report, to the degree it was reported, was certainly a little jarring, but then Jerry Dulac and others squashed that report, saying the Lions never even asked the Steelers to interview Colbert, which they would have to do because Colbert is under contract. So whatever source or report that came from seems to be false and never made any sense anyway, considering why would Colbert start over with a new team for a guy that is pretty close to retirement.
Alex, tell you a little story. Way back when the earth was cooling and we were burning our feet on the earth at the time, and we was walking both ways uphill in the snow in Florida to school. There were these things called newspapers, okay? And
vaguely familiar.
It was news that was printed on paper, and these newspapers were delivered daily if you had a subscription to your house and all like that. And when there was a big story, you usually had to wait several other days and sometimes weeks to get answers or reactions or find out whether or not that news story was true or not. Well, now, thanks to Twitter and other instant news outlets in a day and age that we live in, that kind of stuff, I guess what I'm getting at is the news cycle moves fast, and we went from that report from I guess it was a Detroit radio station and a guy that works there, supposedly a trusted reporter. I wouldn't maybe say as much probably right now, but obviously, claiming that the Lions and Colbert were close, and if the Steelers didn't match, they're probably going to lose them, yada yada. And then, boy, it didn't take long after that. The news cycle went into effect. Jerry Dulac pretty much squashed it right out of the chute, saying that they had not asked the Steelers for permission to speak to Colbert, which makes sense because Colbert, as we know it, is under contract with the team through the 2021 draft. And then, you get on into, you knew at that point Mike Tomlin was going to be asked about quote unquote rumor about Kevin Colbert, and here's what he just here's what he just had to say on that. If I can find it real quick here, do you have the quote in front of you that I just lost from Tomlin on Cole? Hold on a minute here. Here it is. He says, boy, that got way down the list on Steelers Depot real quick there.
Hamster wheels running today.
Absolutely. I've worked with Kevin for 14 years, man. We have an awesome working relationship, Tomlin said. We communicate each and every day, multiple times a day. We communicated today. I look forward to beginning this process with him. I know next to nothing about the rumors of things that you mentioned. I could have done without the next to nothing in there, but I'm guessing somebody gave Tomlin the high sign that maybe something like that was floating out there, and to maybe expect a question on that. But and now the reporter or news person that started that is kind of chimed in on Twitter, basically walking his stuff back, saying, obviously my information has been debunked. This does not mean there isn't or wasn't back channel things going on. I don't know how there's back channel things going on if they can't talk to Colbert. This is a reputable football person, not a limo driver, lawyer, or chef. It appears he is wrong, and that is on me. So that's where we stand with the Kevin Colbert news early Wednesday morning. Now, look, Colbert's contract does end, or current contract reportedly does end in, after the 2021 draft. We'll wait and see what happens. He made it clear, I think, in September that, he's year to year at this point, and that's kind of the agreement that both he and Art Rooney II have together. Is there a possibility that they don't extend Colbert past the draft? I suppose it's possible. We just don't have enough information on that. But between now and the draft, I would think nothing's going to change in regard to Colbert.
I agree. Again, never made sense for Colbert, who's got 2 or 3 years left probably to start over with Detroit and try to rebuild there. Granted, he was with the Lions before coming to Pittsburgh in 2000, but just never made a lot of sense.
Not that 64 is old, all right?
Right, but clearly he knows he's going year to year right now.
Right.
Yeah. And so I expect Colbert to be the GM obviously through this year's draft, and I expect him to be the GM through next season. I think there's always a possibility that a GM could leave after the draft, but generally that's not how it's done, with a couple notable exceptions. But I think he would take the route of, this will be my final year, and then they'll know after a season ends, like next year, for example, as soon as the 2021 season ends, Colbert would step down, they would find his replacement and go from there, as opposed to doing it right after the draft and having a new GM after all the other hires have been made, and then the new GM didn't get the chance to have his first off season until the following season. It's just typically not the way it goes.
I concur.
So much ado about nothing. Other front office stuff. Omar Khan narrowly lost out the job to Houston. I think we covered that. He also interviewed to be the GM of the Panthers, but he did not make the second round of interviews, so he will not become the next GM of Carolina. Figures to stay in Pittsburgh for at least another year. We did note, and I should have mentioned this earlier on in the process, that I believe if Khan were to get hired by another team as their GM, Pittsburgh would get 2 third-round compensatory picks in each of the next draft. So 1 pick in a future draft and a future third and a draft after that, as part of the NFL's new minority hiring compensation program that just passed earlier this year. But that's probably a moot point now that Khan looks to be staying in Pittsburgh for 2021.
Yeah, we'll we'll watch and see if anything else opens up for Khan, throughout the rest of this offseason process, which, obviously any open GM spot, is probably going to get filled fairly quickly here. So we should know the status of him pretty soon. And boy, I think it's a little bit concerning if you're Omar Khan that you can't get even to the second round on some of these interviews, right? And that's kind of, his name's been thrown around quite a bit over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. Time gets away from me here, but he's never landed that job. And you and I had the conversation, I think, in the past podcast, most recent one or the one before that. Why is that? Is he just more of a numbers guy and not an X's and O's guy? It's quite possible. I wonder if Khan and Brandon Hunt were the Spider-Man meme.
In what sense?
Just pointing at each other, with
right.
this. I kind of envisioned that happening as that news about Colbert, which obviously we said is debunked by now, surfaced this morning there. Do you think that, when and if Colbert moves along here in the next year or two, do you think Hunt and Omar Khan can coincide? I guess that's the biggest thing that the question on my mind coming out of all this Wednesday morning news cycle.
What do you mean by coincide?
Do you see a Steelers front office post Kevin Colbert, including both Brandon Hunt and Omar Khan, whether one's over the other. You see what I'm saying here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's possible. And now again, I think Khan's obviously getting looks. Will that continue? That could be the case. But sure, it's possible that if Hunt was the GM, that Khan would stay in his role and vice versa.
I envision if Brandon Hunt were to get the nod, I can envision Khan being kind of miffed, if you will.
But where would he go? I mean, he could.
That's not in my head. It's just that being miffed with the Steelers, and thus that relationship possibly ending at that point.
Like a Russ Grimm situation back in.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, maybe. But I find it tough to imagine the two being in a front office together should Hunt get the nod over Omar Khan. But that's for another day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of years from now for sure. One other Steelers note to pass along. Steelers made a minor roster move yesterday, announcing they had waived running back Trey Edmonds, who finished the year on IR due to a hamstring injury. I believe he was set to be a free agent anyway, so kind of a moot-ish point with Trey Edmonds released from the roster.
Yeah, he was scheduled to be, I think, restricted, I believe, right?
Was he?
And now they weren't going to tender him anyway, but it was one less name I had to put in my post. A little less work for Dave last night writing that up. I had, I think, two names on that list there, and I don't know if we'll get to that later on in the show or maybe on Friday's show, but we'll obviously start going over the list of free agents here in detail fairly soon. In the meantime, there's two posts already up on SteelersDepot.com. Prime free agency primers, if you will. I've already knocked out the exclusive rights free agents, and of which there are 3, and this morning the restricted free agents, of which there are 2. So we invite you to read that on the site, please.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's show. Mike Tomlin had his year-end press conference at noon, wrapped up just a little bit ago. It was maybe a little less eventful than I anticipated. Maybe that was just wrong expectations from me. Tomlin obviously didn't commit to a lot of things, just talking about the offseason process. They're just starting that with meetings and discussions, and there's obviously going to be a lot of movement and action here one way or the other in the next couple of weeks, but nothing decided with the loss, just a couple days in the rear view mirror. So where do you want to start this conversation? What was one of the more notable things you heard from Tomlin that kind of maybe made your ears perk up a little bit?
Well, I think the obvious fact that we talked about, we expect some change, whatever that change, how lengthy, how big or small it might be to take place on the coaching staff, and I think that's kind of obvious, especially the way the manner that the 2020 season ended. So now we sit and wait to the who, what, why, how. And who's next kind of portion of it there. We do know now, thanks to some confirmed reports by, I think, Jerry Dulac, that the contracts of both Keith Butler and Randy Fichtner, I believe, are up in March. There. So I think that was kind of maybe an understood, but now, more confirmation on that. Okay. And what's going to happen there? Is it going to be one or both or neither? We'll see. And I don't know how much a Ben Roethlisberger decision might play into that. We had a little bit of a discussion, I think, on the last show that if Ben comes back, how receptive would he be to maybe a change at offensive coordinator? That's an interesting discussion to have. It's interesting to envision a Roethlisberger post Fichtner if Matt Canada is not the successor to that. I think you would agree to that, and I think I even saw you on Twitter this morning saying you're not kind of really expecting Randy Fichtner to be out if Ben Roethlisberger returns. But the way, Mike Tomlin, in no uncertain terms, made it clear that there's going to be changes. Now, I'll tell you first and foremost, the way I read in between the lines, at least a couple of position coaches, i.e., Sean Surratt and Eddie Faulkner. I really think those two guys could potentially be looking for work. And where it goes from there, you obviously have to leave open the possibility of either or both, Keith Butler and Randy Fichtner not being back for the sheer fact that their contracts are up, and you look at the way the season progressed.
And generally, when Pittsburgh makes coaching changes, they don't fire, they just don't renew contracts. That was the case with Todd Haley, I believe. I think even with Joey Porter and guys like that. So that has generally been their MO. Yeah, I go into this.
they handled the glitch, right?
They handled the glitch?
Yeah. Office Space. Have you seen Office Space?
I have. I don't know if I get that particular reference.
We fixed the glitch. I forget the character's name. The guy that with the stapler and all like that, and he had evidently been terminated a long time ago, and he's still working there, and it was because of a glitch in payroll. He was still getting paid. Well, they didn't want the confrontation of having to fire him, so they said, well, we fixed the glitch.
Is Randy Fichtner going to get moved to the basement, the corner spot?
He might have to take his red stapler with him and go down there and that kind of thing. I wonder how many people are. Hopefully, there are a lot of people chuckling and got that reference. I guess that's the age difference between me and you and the pop culture, but whenever I say fix the glitch, that's kind of the reference there. They're not going to fire any of those guys. They're just going to fix the glitch in the payroll system, and everything will work itself out from there. So I'm not making light of people possibly losing their jobs, but obviously this is, and Mike Tomlin made it clear, change in this business is part of what happens here. So I would think that any decisions would happen within the next. Hopefully, it don't happen when I'm on a plane to Pittsburgh, PA, to visit you. But odds are probably pretty good while we're sitting up there in Pittsburgh visiting for the first time, and that's when that kind of news will probably break.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, change is inevitable. That's what Tomlin said. The question is just what degree it'll happen. And I still stand by that. I think Randy Fichtner is going to be the OC next year. I'm not going to guarantee it, nor will I be mad if Fichtner's gone. I think, something Tomlin said, which was interesting, not referencing the coaching staff necessarily, but just the struggles at the end of years this team has had for several seasons now, December collapses, early playoff exits, things like that. He says, quote, "It has been a disappointment. I'll acknowledge that. I'm not going to maintain status quo and hope that the outcome changes. That's the definition of insanity." And he's right about that. But the question is, will his actions reflect changing the status quo? And that was a conversation we had at length on Monday's show about, you can't expect the same thing over and over. What's happening now, what they're doing now clearly isn't getting the results they want. And if they only make those minor tweaks, they're going to get just minor difference in results, and it's not going to be enough to push you over the top, especially as this roster gets worse in the offseason, which it will. So we'll see. I'm not opposed to shaking things up and trying to do something a little bit different. I think the Steelers, to an extent, while stability is obviously valuable, you can get comfortable with that stability and that status quo. Maybe that's kind of the stagnation this team is in right now. So we'll see. I'm not going to guarantee anything. I agree with you. I think they do take a hard look at Surratt and Faulkner. This run game was just a disaster this season for a lot of reasons, but coaches will have to be held to account for that. So it will be hopefully an interesting month. If it's quiet, though, then it will be status quo.
James Daniels, another one,
Right. What about that?
That's another one you have to look at. Look, I've never been hellfire or not in a while. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and now really for lack of a better word, you've been doing it for a long time as well too. Where you go from fanboy to not punching holes in walls when the team gets eliminated from the playoffs, and it not ruining your week, month, day, year, whatever. You get where I'm going at there. For lack of the better, and maybe that's what makes you and I and Matthew and several other contributors on the site so good at what we do. And yes, I'm patting ourselves on the back. Is that we're able to kind of step away and look at this without so much emotion involved. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I bleed black and gold, and you do as well, too. It's in my DNA. It's what I love to do. I am blessed. I am thoroughly blessed. I woke up this morning thinking, after 3 hours sleep, thinking, man, I've got it made what I do, for a day in, day out here. But with that, I've never been a not for a while, hellfire brimstone coordinator, and that's, fire to coordinator. And that's
Sure.
because I've become more of a student of the game. I get a lot more caught up with execution. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I love scheme. I love diagnosing stuff and all like that and all. And yes, there are coordinators better than others. If there was going to be a coordinator Hall of Fame, if you will, or an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl list for coordinators, Keith Butler and Randy Fichtner would not sniff votes in either of those type quantities, if you will. Now, within that, when you consider the Steelers specifically not fully knowing certain aspects related to, let's look at offensively. We've had this talk. How much say does Ben Roethlisberger have on the week in, week out stuff and changes and play calling and those sort of things? That's one aspect that we don't really know. We can say that we think we know. Other people can say they think they know, but unless we hear it directly from someone within that organization, that's required, in those meetings and those kind of things, we don't know. Conversely, Keith Butler, is he just a mouthpiece? Is Mike Tomlin the defensive coordinator of this team, plain and simple, and is Keith Butler just a mouthpiece? That's another thing that's kind of been a running narrative, if you will. I'm going a long way around here to make a point here. All right, my point right now at this point with the Steelers, and we'll get into it here in a minute, assuming Roethlisberger returns for 2021, and assuming you're going to change one of those coordinators, go ahead and change both of them. I just don't see the reason to change one and not the other, if you're going to change one at all. That is my view on it. And obviously they would be under a one, if they got re-upped, it'd be, okay, this is your last ride, fellas, what you got, and especially if Ben Roethlisberger comes back. If they changed one or both of them, I would change both if you're going to change one. That's my thought. Did I make sense there?
It does, but I think you just look at the merits. I don't think you have to do this, either or neither or both, and just at the merits of each guy. And if he's worthy of coming back, you retain him. If he's not, he's not. I think that's just the simplest and I think the most prudent way to approach the situation.
Well, most people are yelling at their podcast machine right now. Neither one of them deserve merit, probably.
Right, and that's a conclusion. That's fine, but I wouldn't say, well, we're firing Randy, so we also have to fire Keith because, well, Randy's gone, and we're just going to blow the whole thing up. I think it's just a merit thing. To your point.
Well, look. I mean, you say what you want about the offense. At least they put up 40-something points in this game. Now, granted, it was against a prevent defense and missing two corners. Probably something that they should have done, regardless how the start of that game went there. But let's not lose the fact that this Steelers defense. High expectations going into this year. For the most part, they lived up to them. Play against the run throughout the season, had your eyebrows raised, play on third and long situations, raise your eyebrows. When they did allow explosive plays, boy, they were explosive. If you will, and then just look specifically at the last two playoff losses this team has had. Jacksonville, okay, maybe it's a little bit more excusable, when it comes to what happened in Jacksonville a couple years ago. But they had injuries this year on the defensive side of the ball. Both situations if you're going to analyze Keith Butler and Keith Butler alone, then those two playoff games have to come into the talk there.
Of course, yeah. I'm not saying otherwise. I think you just have to look at both guys. I think the defense was better than the offense this year overall, and they started stronger than the offense did this year, but they had their own issues as well. To the questions you posed, I know they were partially rhetorical, but let me just try to answer them at least to some safe assumption. it's fair to say that Ben has a significant role in the game plan during the week. We don't know to what degree. I can't give you a percentage or a split, but I think, is it fair to say Ben has a significant role in the game plan?
I would say yes, and probably more than what we even might think. And I think that's a lot. So, the question becomes to what degree,
Right, yeah. But the point is he has a significant role, and I think that answers the question well enough for the purposes of any discussions we might have about relationships and effectiveness and things like that. And then with the Keith Butler side of things, I think it's also very fair to say that Mike Tomlin has certainly had a growing influence on this defense over the years, and the tidbits of information we get from reporters seems to verify that, including the report that Tomlin called all the plays in Sunday's loss to the Browns.
Okay. And
now, what do with that information what you will, but at least I think it answers the question well enough. And for Butler, at least, if Tomlin is just basically going to just continue to take over, then it does call into question what is Butler's use for this team in his current role as DC, at least.
Right. Sure. And that's my thoughts on both of the coordinators then. Either you have to let coordinators coordinate, or you don't let your quarterback coordinate, in my opinion. Obviously, look, do I believe the aspect that you get in certain situations like we've seen, a couple times this past season in second halves where you got to go hurry up, you got to spread things out, and look, Ben likes us all to think that he's out there drawing up plays, and then he'll circle back and say, I didn't mean literally drawing up plays in the sand. He's got this unique way of, I don't know if I call it passive aggressiveness to him, although he does have that. But you see what I'm getting at? Sure. When it goes good, I did it. When it doesn't go good, I didn't do it.
Well, I don't know if it's that. I think he accepts a lot of blame, especially since the whole AB stuff. He kind of just makes everything
after it goes bad in the game. He's the first one out there to say, "Oh yeah, if I play better, that." Right. But on the flip side, he's not afraid to say when things absolutely go right that I played a big hand in it.
Yeah, it's just a flair for the dramatic. Is been Ben's at least the way I look at it. But I think that's all besides the point. And trying to answer the question of do Fichtner and Butler deserve to return. If they say neither of those guys should come back, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. I think you have to start looking at some bigger picture changes as opposed to those minor tweaks around the edges. So I expect those guys to return. I'm not 100% confident in that, not even close to 100%. But I would not lose a lot of sleep if either guy returned, because I don't think Fichtner is doing anything enough to elevate this group. I think the starts have been abysmal the last 2 years, and that is to some degree the most important reflection of coaching is how you start these games. And I just think you got to make some bigger changes. And with Butler, if he's not even going to be the DC anymore and more of a figurehead, then again it calls into question what is his use to the team.
Once again, I think if they move. Because you know what's going to happen if they move on from one and not the other one, then you're going to have the narrative as soon as the boat starts taking on water next season. It's going to be, well, you shouldn't have played favorites with so and so, or
so that's not playing favorites,
or you shouldn't have let Ben have too much say on who the coordinator is, or on the other side. Tomlin didn't want to. Tomlin admits, wanted to make Butler the fall guy. There's all different. Back to my original point. I think that if they change one, they should change both. Period, because it wasn't good enough on either side of the ball. So either you think that you can correct it on both sides of the ball with both those guys, or you don't. That's just my overarching thought process coming out of this.
Do you think they should change one, and by that extension change both?
I think a lot of it has to do with what Ben thinks here.
What about Keith Butler? Because if you fire Butler, then you fire Randy.
Right.
So do you think Butler should stay?
And then they just tell Ben to suck it, deal with it.
Well, I'm asking, should Butler stay or go? Has he earned the ability to come back? And if you keep Butler, then you keep Randy.
I don't have a preference, I don't think, either way. I think one of my next portion of this is to find out what Roethlisberger is definitely going to do. Because once again, I not that it's impossible, as I like to say, just trying to envision him. Look, the obvious stepping stones would be not too far from what they have, which would be Matt Canada on the offensive side of the ball and probably Terrell Austin on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, well, if Tomlin's basically DC, then it doesn't even matter who your DC ultimately is if he's not.
Well, he would have to make the change with the understanding that, don't try to. How about getting lost in clock management and game decisions and let you coordinate. I mean, that's why you hire him, right? Now, do you I don't want the head coach, if I'm a coordinator, I don't want the head coach in my ear, throughout a game.
I think it's going to be the understanding of any future DC that, if you're Tomlin, you're going to say, I'm running the show here. I mean, you're going to evolve. But
maybe one of Tomlin's faults is that he tries to do too much.
Maybe. I mean, I think he was more hands-off early on, and the reports seem to indicate that his role has been increasing. Obviously, he was very hands-off when he first got here, and, he kept Dick LeBeau. He didn't have to do that, but said that was the right thing to do and let LeBeau run things. And I think, as Butler's taken over, Tomlin's influence has grown. I
would love to be a fly on the wall on the sideline. How many times, even Tomlin to Randy Fichtner, we saw a little bit of sneak visual evidence with Haley and Tomlin. Run the ball. Those kind of things, kind of dictating a few things to Todd Haley. If that happened with him, what do you think is happening with Fichtner? Someone who he goes way, 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 way back with.
Sure, but I think it's fair to say Tomlin is a lot more hands-on in-game with the defense than the offense.
Sure.
That's a very safe assumption right now. The OC has more freedom on game day than the DC does right now.
I'll leave it at this. If you're going to change one, use the opportunity to go ahead and change both.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. Again, I'm not opposed to it. Would I move on from Randy in a vacuum? I would. I don't think he's done a good enough job here. I understand it calls into question, what do you do with Ben and changes in scheme and things like that. But you just put that aside for a second on the merits of Randy. I don't think he's worth coming back. Now, to be clear, it does not fix all the problems. Just because you fire Randy doesn't mean that everything's going to be sunshine and roses. The way when you moved on from Haley, things didn't magically get a whole lot better. So I don't want to pretend like Randy is the only source or the sole source of issues here. But I don't think he's been much of the solution either.
I don't think if you change from Fichtner to Canada, and if Ben comes back, I don't think it's going to be the leaps and bounds offensively that people think it might be.
I think that's fair, but not to get into this too much, but do they have to go to Canada? I think it's one of the problems with the team is saying, well, we have to go to Canada. We can't even look at outside Canada.
Well, that's sort of the point I'm making.
Right.
Is I would go outside, and Ben really wouldn't like that,
Right.
So, and look, he's a franchise quarterback, and if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy,
Right. Happy wife, happy life is the old saying. Let's get to Ben though, because Tomlin had, and I don't know how to frame these, because Tomlin is obviously cautious with some of the phrasing and words he uses here at the end of the season as they're still kind of assessing things. But he praised Ben's health this year and durability and getting ready and being available and starting every single game that he played in. But he did seem to be a little bit more non-committal in the performance of Ben and also Ben's future. I don't know if that's just Tomlin being Tomlin and not committing to things, or if he doesn't know if Ben's going to come back for sure yet, so he's still being a little cagey, or if there is some sort of internal discussion about what the Steelers should do with Ben's future. Let me try to find the exact quote here. And this can be maybe partially chalked up to the Tomlin being Tomlin with his weird phrases and things like that. But
wordsmith.
But he was asked about Ben's camp situation and just basically, will Ben be back next year? And here was one quote that Tomlin had. Quote, "I think it's reasonable to assume there's a chance he's going to be back, certainly." It's a lot of qualifiers there for your future Hall of Fame quarterback.
He did say, read that again. Read the exact quote.
I think it's reasonable to assume there's a chance he's going to be back, certainly. So we're saying it's reasonable to assume there's a chance he'll be back, certainly. It's a lot going on there.
It sounds like something I would say, but not by not meaning to.
He's clearly being very careful with his words here. And the question is why, and there's a couple different directions you can go with that I just laid out. But he's obviously, any other you would say, Ben's back, and we can't wait for Ben to come back. But
if I didn't actually hear it and you read those words to me, and I have to quickly contextualize it, and really this is the way I interpret it the moment it came out of his mouth. And really, it goes back to really what I've thought ever since the season has ended. Anyway, they expect Ben to be back.
Yeah, I think it's, to not sound like Tomlin, it's reasonable that Ben wants to come back in 2021. He's basically said as much. The question is, does the team want him back? And I assume they do, but Tomlin's answer here didn't reflect that.
And look, this kind of goes back to the whole coordinator thing too.
Maybe that's where the uncertainty comes from.
If maybe that, and on top of it, look, if you're going to do some wholesale coaching staff changes, unless you unequivocally, deep down in your heart, believe that you can put together some sort of product that can make a legitimate run at the Super Bowl, then maybe you need to consider moving on from Roethlisberger. And then going ahead and start putting things in place but the Steelers are never going to tell you that. Every word out of their mouth, that Tomlin or Kevin Colbert, is every year our organization is trying to compete for a Super Bowl championship and all like that.
Which is true, which has been their approach for 15 years now.
Right, but what I'm getting at is if you have any inclination in your head right now, that you kind of wonder if Ben can lead them to a championship one more time, and then on top of it, you wonder if you got the right coordinators in place. Well, and if you can probably keep that defense intact with that $19 million, then maybe that conversation needs to be had.
Mm-hmm.
What did we learn about Roethlisberger this year, if anything?
Well, we learned that he's not. This isn't Bradshaw 2.0, where his arm just simply isn't there anymore off the surgery, and that's understandable to expect and see with the advances in medicine. I think he's still a capable quarterback. Things got worse at the end of the season for the entire team, and I think for Ben as well, including in the wild card loss. So I don't know if we learned anything new about Ben as a player, but we learned that the arm is still there enough in the sense that he can still be an NFL quarterback.
With all these potential changes, especially on the offensive line, that we could potentially see at least at both tackle, or at least one of the tackle positions, possibly, maybe two. Who knows what's going to happen with Marquise Pouncey at center right now? We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show, I guess, as well. But if you got a new running backs coach, tight ends coach, offensive line coach, and if you bring in a new coordinator, that's a lot of plates spinning, man, for someone that doesn't extend plays like he used to, and really hasn't been great throwing the football down the football field in a few years now, and you don't have this guy named Antonio Brown there bailing you out, right. A lot. I'm not advocating them moving on from Roethlisberger, but I think just encapsulating all that I just said there, if you're going to have a conversation about coordinators, and if you kind of question whether or not, if you're not can't commit to, look, they know whether or not they think Ben played well and
right.
could potentially lead this team to another championship in 2021. If they can't unequivocally say, look, Ben, as long as we got the franchise quarterback, Ben, regardless of what happens from there on out, we can win a championship, then you stick with status, you stick with what you have, I think. But if you don't, and you think maybe you could potentially get some pieces in place and get another young quarterback coming through the system, potentially behind, let it be a sinker. I'd hate to be Mason Rudolph, but you put him in a lame duck situation. Look, go see if you can get the franchise tag. Good luck. And then, by the way, we got this guy we drafted in the first or second round sitting here waiting to get him on the field here. Maybe that's conversations that need to be had.
Yeah, I think I have two thoughts there. One is that Tomlin's answer that seemed, obviously non-committal, a little cagey, is just maybe reflective of the entire team being in a weird spot, an uncertain spot. Are we rebuilding? Are we retooling? Are we still going all in? What phase are we in right now?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he really knows right. And
no, I don't think he does.
And I think he kind of made that kind of clear. Look, he's still trying to get
Right.
over getting spanked the other night, you know, and probably I bet about half of his ear got chewed off too. On that, he's just trying. I bet the last thing he was looking forward to was waking up this morning and sitting in front of the media for 30 minutes. But such is life when you get out of the tournament that quick and in a manner that they were eliminated there. But overall, yeah, I think he's got a general idea of what things might look like in 2021, even though he lets on like he's still got to have all these meetings and decisions need to be made. Hell, you and I can loosely do that. I haven't stepped a foot inside that facility,
Right. But I do think there's uncertainty. I don't think he exactly knows the direction this team's going to be in because of all the looming potential changes or changes they expect to happen.
The day of reckoning is here.
Yeah.
Right. Or closer to it. I kind of envision that day of reckoning being maybe a year from now, but left open a possibility of it, especially with Ben coming off injury, that it could possibly be after this year. But then, go ahead.
I was saying, I think they hoped and expected it would come on the backs of a Lombardi trophy that would make the situation at least feel a little bit better.
And look, I mean, like it or not, and people won't, get lost in the sands of the hourglass here. As I stated the other day, you just don't go 11-0 in the NFL. So for whatever that is worth, which right now, here's your 11-0, here's your 11-0 trophy.
Right.
Invisible. There is something to that.
Right. But what does it mean for next year? It means
nothing.
It means nothing. Right. You're losing something those guys.
At least, I mean, did they overachieve? Did they get the benefit of the schedule? What were they just damn ass lucky? You could call that in the Tennessee Titans game, probably.
Right.
For sure. But I mean, teams just don't start 11-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were like the 11th to do it since 1978, since 16-game seasons. But the other portion of Tomlin's answer about Ben, and again, maybe I'm reading a little too much. Maybe it's just part of Tomlin's overall. We're not assessing anything right now until we discuss it more. But Tomlin made it very clear. He loved Ben's performance about staying healthy, being available, and he admitted, he said there was a, quote, high level of concern about his health and ability to perform before the year started. Very different than what they said prior to the season about we're confident, Ben's rehab's been awesome, he's going to be great. Tomlin kind of changed the answer there, but he also, as soon as he said, Ben's performance health-wise was great, then he said, we'll assess the performance of Ben's play later. So there was a clear difference between Tomlin very adamant about, we loved that Ben was available and healthy and all that. We'll assess his performance later. So it's a little bit of a difference there in terms of the way he framed the health of Ben and the play of Ben.
Yeah, very minister of defense.
Do you have the quote there? Because I didn't catch all of that quote.
Well, give me a snippet of it.
Yeah, it was just somewhere in the initial question about Ben and saying that he loved the performance of Ben from a health standpoint, and then we'll assess the play.
Feeling, and that's reasonable. Probably a reasonable feeling as I sit here today from a health. Okay, that's the wrong health. That's.
I apologize.
There really wasn't high level of concern about his health and his ability to perform. I can't say. Oh, there really was. I think our transcribe.
Yeah. Maybe we'll go back to this for Friday because I don't want to say anything.
He says
wrong
I can't say enough about his efforts. I can't say enough about the efforts of our medical staff and our rehabilitation staff that work hand in hand with him to get him through that process and to get him to stadiums this year. And man, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. No. Well, then he says all that. I was more than happy with the performance of his health, his ability to stay up. End sentence. In terms of the quality of his play and our play, we'll begin to assess that in the upcoming days. But in terms of him responding to the challenges that he specifically came into the season ready to face, spectacular. So he made a very clear line between the availability was spectacular, the quality of the play. We'll assess that. Does that mean something? I don't know, but Tomlin did not say that Ben had a great season from a play standpoint. He said he had a great season from a health, availability, recovery standpoint.
Yeah, but then again, us trying to parse Tomlin, that's a full-time.
Yeah, it's tough. That's what I'm saying. But that's just the uncertainty of it. Where if you wanted to put your tinfoil hat on real tight and say, could this team move on from Ben willingly, even if Ben wants to come back? Tomlin's reasonable chance to assume that there's a chance maybe he could come back, and then this part about performance of health and performance of play would be some Blues clues we could look back upon, 2 months from now.
My overall gut feeling still remains that Ben Roethlisberger will be back in 2021.
Mine as well.
And that's where I'm at on that. And with that, I believe you have to open up the distinct possibility that Randy Fichtner could possibly still be the offensive coordinator. But if it's not Randy, within that, you have to open up the extreme possibility that it would be Matt Canada. Anything other than that, it gets kind of dicey from there.
Right. But as Tomlin says, if he wants to change the status quo, just firing a positional coach here or there is not really changing the status quo. That's just the wheels turning that happens around almost every organization every single season.
And look, like, as we said a couple of last podcasts or one before that, it's either Ben's going to be allowed to dictate what happens a lot offensively, or he's not.
Mm-hmm. And if he's here, he's going to get to dictate a good bit.
Absolutely, he is. Do you think you're going to, look, it's hard enough. They can't get with the new CBA. People think that you got all this time to draw up plays and practice stuff and all that kind of stuff. You don't, man. And one of these times we're going to get, I think, Dan Orlovsky in, who I think is absolutely a tremendous young, obviously a former NFL quarterback and a great on-air talent now with ESPN. He mentioned that he's coming on the podcast this offseason. I would like to go in. I'd like to spend 30 minutes with him on the podcast talking about all what can and can't get accomplished, training camp, and then in season and game planning. I want to get it. I want to hold your hand and go walking through that minutia together, because I think us and the listeners would learn a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be fantastic to get that outsider perspective. Obviously, someone that played quarterback knows the dynamics and relationships there, not about Ben's situation in particular, but just overall QB-OC relationships. I think that would be invaluable.
How much more time do we need to spend on this now? I mean, we're going to be talking about it every show here for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks.
Right. Yeah, the issue, maybe not the issue, but the thought is there just aren't a lot of concrete answers right now. And that's uncommon for Pittsburgh. Usually there's very concrete, these are the guys who are back, this is the direction this team's going, Super Bowl, rebuild, retool for the eyes of making a Super Bowl run. And of course, that's still, I think, the overall goal this year. As long as you have Ben, that is going to be your goal. But there's just more uncertainty around the state of the team than there has been really, I don't even know since when, for a long time.
Yeah, and let's wrap it up. What kind of, you make a good point there. I mean, not only do you have uncertainty, let's say with the coaching staff and whether or not your quarterback wants to play or not in 2021, you also have the other stuff involved there with the cap number, not knowing. Does Kevin Colbert probably have a pretty decent idea about what the cap number might be at this point? Probably, but obviously it's not firm by any stretch of the imagination there. And then on top of it, I mean, Tomlin damn sure doesn't. I really don't think. I bet Tomlin can't tell you how to break down a contract.
Yeah, which is fine.
Which is fine. I don't want him to. That's what you have Omar Khan and just coach.
Right.
Coach the players we put out there, and I don't blame Tomlin for that. So it's hard for him. In no uncertain terms, that's another thing that I took away from the press conference today was Tomlin saying, look, I don't understand all that other minutia that them nerds do, so I can't really speak about that. And, here's the thing. It's very cut and dry. Here's one aspect that should be brought into the picture if Roethlisberger wants to come back, and it'd be interesting to see if this kind of conversation does take place. If Ben wants to play and you want Ben back and all, and you want to attempt to make a run at it, then you unequivocally at that point have to go get with Ben and say, look, let's just be clear here. 2021's it, brother. That is it. All right. And within that, we're going to need you to add 4 false years onto your contract here, so we can take that $18 million of that $19 million that we owe you, stretch that out, so that we can keep a good chunk of this team together. And then you everybody grabs a rosary, and then you pray that the cap comes in flat at $198.2 million or above.
Yeah, is that the best way to look at this team? Say, Ben, you come back for 2021, that's it. We're not going to do anything else unless it is that false year stuff that you said. And then for 2022, our cap situation is going to really open up. The salary cap overall for the league should explode, because hopefully by then the COVID stuff is past us, and the economics of that will improve the salary cap situation. And then at that point, you go get your next franchise quarterback, and then you can spend a lot in free agency with maybe a new GM. I don't know, but maybe that's the way this team should look at things.
Look, unless you retain some of these defensive free agents that this team has, that, as we said, that defense is going to go backwards. It's probably going to go backwards regardless. All right. But the only way you come close to having some semblance of a good defense is maintaining a few of these guys. And obviously, I'm not talking. I think we both agree, regardless of what happens, Bud Dupree's still probably gone. All right.
Yes.
Whatever happens there. But the guys like the Mike Hilton, okay, the guys like the Cameron Sutton, Tyson Alualu, we'll get into a conversation or a way to maybe retain him for another season there. You need to try to figure out a way to retain as many of those guys as you possibly can at fair market. They're not going to just say, look, I'm re-upping. Here's your hometown discount. I've never been paid yet, but here's a hometown discount for you. That stuff, you're going to have to pay those guys whatever the fair market value is deemed to be. And the only way you're going to be able to retain those guys is if, the cap stays flat at $198.2 million, and B, you find a way to get the maximum return on the $19 million that you're scheduled to pay Ben in 2021, and the maximum return on that $19 million, other than him taking a pay cut, which we know he's not going to do, is to add on 4 false years, turn $18 million of that $19 million dollars into a signing bonus, and then attack it that way, and use that little bit of breathing room that you get for some first-year cap hits on some of these defensive players. You let Juju walk and Bud Dupree walk, and then Villanueva walk, and then you go from there.
Yeah, maybe.
Does that make sense?
It does. It's hard to know what direction this team wants to be in right now, and that is just, I think, uncharted territory compared to the last 15 years. And
then obviously Roethlisberger, as part of him agreeing to do something, and look, that's kind of an extreme kind of situation there, right? With the false years, but obviously they would be voidable years on his end, so that he can't get forced into see you later, fixing the glitch. You know what I'm saying there? So in other words, Roethlisberger would then have the right to pull Tom Brady, if you will. If he says, look, I got one more year in me. I'm going to go look, Brady's done over there in Tampa Bay. I want one last ride with Bruce Arians in Tampa Bay. Of course, I'm being extreme there, but you got to give something to get something in a situation like that.
And so what would Ben get in that false year scenario?
He would just be guaranteed to get. I mean, he'd get a guarantee to have some semblance of a defense to ride with in 2021.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
which would give him a legit opportunity potentially to win a championship. Because look, you need a defense to win it. You need a defense and a franchise quarterback to win a championship in the NFL. Correct.
We'll see. Also on some other quarterback news, Mike Tomlin talking about Mason Rudolph quickly on that says, quote, he thought he displayed that he took a step in growth and development with his performance, even though it was a small sample size. Tomlin says he expects that growth and development to continue, but Rudolph also entering the final year of his contract, his rookie deal in 2021. So
I think we both agree that Mason took a step forward.
Yes, but is it enough to be the heir? I still do not believe so.
Well, I mean, it's enough that if they moved on from Roethlisberger, he'd get a 1-year shot to play to show that he could be a franchise quarterback. But that's it. And obviously, the chances of that happening would be very, very slim, especially if he didn't have a defense.
I would hope in that scenario they've also drafted a quarterback. And it's not just here's one clear year for Mason. There's Mason may start, but there's a rookie in the wings as well.
That would potentially be something, because look, even going back to let's not forget that when Roethlisberger was drafted, what the initial plan was with him.
To just ride the bench behind Maddox and Charlie Batch too, correct?
Right. So you're not going to go out and draft a quarterback and hopefully throw him to the wolves, you know.
Yeah, but in today's day and age, rookie quarterbacks have had success.
I wouldn't advise. I'll put it to you this: I wouldn't advise doing that. It would be Mason starts the year. Here you go. Let's see how we go. And then obviously, if things didn't go well, 4 or 5 weeks into the season, then or injury happens, then of course you get the kid in there. But go ahead.
I was gonna say I think at best Rudolph would be in that bridge scenario where he's just there letting the rookie sit for a bit. A year max, and then you turn to the rookie, unless Rudolph really lights it up.
Right. He would obviously have to play himself into a tag period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm not expecting those things to happen.
Okay.
In terms of him playing.
Right. Well, look, we've said now, look, he's essentially a lame duck because their contracts both ending at the same time, and assuming Roethlisberger does come back, then, it's easy to speculate what would happen after the 2021 season.
Which would be Ben retiring.
Well, yeah, Ben being out and Mason hitting free agency and going somewhere else.
Right, and then you're just drafting a rookie and you're starting, it's 2004-ish all over, but probably even worse because you don't really have any quarterback on your roster at that point.
Right, well, but you'd have cap space to go out and get a journeyman guy to teach the kid for 6 games and play Kent Graham.
Yeah, well, hopefully better than Kent Graham. Ugh. Some bad days in early Steelers lore.
Steve Bono. Did that really happen? Sometimes I wonder.
Well, like I said, once Ben retires, it's 1983. We're in the 80s. That's when it'll be this Pittsburgh Steelers team, or the early 2000s for the younger crowd.
Everybody bitching about his play this year and wanting him gone. Be careful what you wish for.
All right, Dave, what else did Tomlin say? Impressed with the rookie class, their maturity, their contributions, and I echoed that. We've discussed that all season long. Just how difficult of a year it is for these rookies, especially to see Claypool and Highsmith and Dotson. All those guys play well was really impressive.
Say again? I'm distracted by Juju tweeting out in response to this Pat McAfee nonsense that Juju wants to go to a large market to keep building his brand.
That was, I think, a report from Dulac, I believe, today, and I think it's being disseminated on the Pat McAfee show.
I have a feeling we'll be writing about that today.
I don't care about Juju's brand. Matthew wrote about the article about Dulac and Juju wanting to go to a bigger marketplace, but we'll see. I don't know if the money's going to be the driving talk.
Money.
And not just brand and things like that. He's building his brand quite well, I think, in Pittsburgh. Can't talk today. Overall, rookie class, impressive contributions, maturity, productivity. Tomlin praised that group overall.
Look, I don't think you can take any issue away with what happened with Chase Claypool this year, with kind of the maturation process of Alex Highsmith and Dotson. Looks like he can be the guy for many more years to come, and those 3 names alone are enough, because obviously anything that you get past. Sorry for my phone ringing here, but
I was mid cough 2 seconds ago, so I sounded
anything that you get past those 3 guys, anything that you hit past the 4th round, really past the third round, in my opinion, is gravy. And the fact that numbers 2, 3, and first or second, third, and fourth rounds guys appear to be hits. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, really impressed. And again, just the immediacy of it. You didn't count on any of those guys to contribute heavily right away, but circumstances dictated it, throughout the season. And so, you're impressed with Dotson. He's going to be your starting left guard next year. Highsmith, you're starting right outside linebacker. Claypool, you're starting Z receiver. We'll see McFarland can do in year 2. Brooks' role could elevate depending on the status of Hilton and Sutton. James Pierre, undrafted guy that seems to have some staying power. So, overall, impressed by the talent evaluation and then, of course, the actual play of those guys.
Right, correct.
Anything else from Tomlin that's worth mentioning?
What do you have up there on the site right now as far as anything else that he said? Oh, the health of the team.
Yeah, not too much there. Just said, what did he say about Banner and Gentry and those guys just working their way back?
Just that they've obviously had their surgeries already, and this is a quote from a health standpoint of our team. We're still going through the exit physical procedures. A lot of the injuries that transpired in season, those surgeries have already transpired, and those people are in the rehab process. Guys like Bud Dupree and Devin Bush and Gentry and Zach Banner and others. If there are surgeries on the horizon for us at the end of the season, those things will be discussed and planned in the upcoming days and weeks. Obviously, our intentions are always to move as swiftly as we can in those circumstances in an effort to not adversely affect the preparation process for the 2021 season. So a lot of Captain Obvious stuff there. He did not give us anything to chew on as far as anybody who might need surgeries. It's dangerous for us to speculate in such manners, but however, you have to wonder about Chris Boswell if something might be in the works for him with groin or groins.
I think it was the right groin. They got weirdly specific on that injury report. David DeCastro, another one we could speculate about, whatever cleanup he may have, and always there's other guys to play through stuff we don't hear about.
And if you're playing along on the board game at home, the group of 6 players that ended the season on the Steelers' primary reserve injured list were Devin Bush, Bud Dupree, Zach Gentry, Zach Banner, and inside linebacker Ulysses Gilbert III with an ankle, and running back Trey Edmonds with a hamstring. But as Alex told you at the top of the show, Trey Edmonds has since been waived, so that's not anything there. Practice squad tackle Jerron Jones ended the 2020 season on what they call the Steelers practice squad injured list. I'm not sure we know what the injury was with him. Probably doesn't matter. And of course, cornerback Joe Hayden ended the season on the team's reserve COVID-19 list. So, and coming out of the game, all we know is that Alex Highsmith had a high ankle injury. And really, I think that's it. So, and until news surfaces about maybe a surgery taking place, we don't have much to offer on that, I don't think.
And not that it's very relevant right now, but reportedly Eric Ebron tested positive for COVID coming out of this game. He was obviously a close contact on the list in Week 17, missed that game, being around Joe Hayden. Other players were close contacts. So had the Steelers had beaten the Browns, would not have had Ebron for the game against the Bills, and probably several other players, potentially at least, who were deemed close contacts.
Yeah. How would that been for a kick? What happened if it's a big if now at this point. Had you come all the way back from that, from that start against the Browns and wind up winning that game and turn around, you have, let's say 5 players miss the next one, due against the Bills in Buffalo due to COVID reasons. So, yeah, that's
still better than losing to the Browns.
Yeah.
That for the next 20 years. All right, Dave, I think that was about it from Tomlin. I think we covered a lot of ground there. Any other, recent news stuff that we should talk about? Jerry Dulac, and it's hard sometimes to tell if these are actual reports or just informed speculation, but saying Alejandro Villanueva will not be re-signed. Pretty confident in that report. Dulac was not any breaking news there, but That is the latest from Jerry Dulac.
I think it's easy to speculate that, and that's kind of what I view that as being, is speculation.
He's informed, though. Like, he knows. He just can't say it out loud.
Right. Maybe he does. Heck, maybe somebody knows it, whether or not he's retiring or not. I don't know. But I don't think it's. I don't think people are dropping their phones right now thinking that there's a possibility that Alejandro Villanueva might not be back in 2021. Right.
Other thing from Tomlin I should mention, he says we will not accept being dead last in rushing. See how they
that
fix
speaks
it.
volumes right there when talking about the coaching, as we talked a little about 30 minutes ago. I think at this point now that if you want to bet on coaches not being back, probably start with Sean Surratt and Eddie Faulkner.
Right, and potentially Adrian Clem, the assistant to Sean Surratt. I think we're going to see some changes there with the offensive line. If they're going to invest offensive line heavily in the draft, maybe a veteran free agent as well. I think that's where you'll see a lot of the changes is in terms of offensive line and trying to become a better rushing team. Is that the right approach? You could argue either way, but obviously they were just horrific, historically bad running the football this year, and Looney's going to provide that mandate, and they're going to have to follow that.
Okay.
All right, we got the any more? I haven't gotten to the Browns game as far along.
I haven't either.
Typical.
Obviously,
I've done some.
Let's table that for maybe Friday or early next week, because I've just scratched the surface on the all 22. Obviously, this week, we're trying to get as much information out on potential future the off season situations in several areas, free agents and those kind of things.
I do have to say though, and I get. And I've agreed with you, Dave, that the predictability of Randy Fichtner can be overstated, and just kind of this catch-all of, if we don't have anything specific to talk about, we'll just call him predictable. But I knew it was bad at the time, and we talked about that Monday, and we both agreed it was a bad call. But I didn't realize how bad it was. The 3rd and 1 fullback dives to Derek Watt that took place about 3 minutes in game time apart that were the same exact play. Not only Derek Watt getting the football, but the same shifts, the same motion, the same exact play call.
Didn't I take issue with that?
Yeah, you did. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but and I did too. But I didn't realize even then it was the same. It was the same. I knew it was the same play to Derek Watt, obviously, but I didn't realize it was the same play call in terms of shifts and motions. And that on 3rd and 1, I mean, that's just brutal. That is just, I think, just really, really brutal, and that is obviously predictable.
Right, absolutely. Look, and I think I said as much. It was the same. It stuck out to me that it was the same everything.
Okay.
Right from the TV tape there. So I obviously look, as I say, and I'll continue to say for as long as I'm still burning my feet on the earth is the fact that there is a good probably 3 to 5 play calls that you'll watch any NFL game. Right. Where you say, I don't know about that. And there's probably 1 or 2 of those where you probably say, oh, why'd you run that same thing again?
But it always seems to come in these crucial money situations, defining moments, whether it's 4th and goal or goal line in general, or these 3rd and 1 moments where you seem to be, and partially that's because these things get magnified when it comes to pass or fail, but also, these become the money downs you have to convert. And it feels like there's always some sort of, quirk with the call.
Here's the thing that makes a offensive coordinator absolutely great, impeccable, and probably why they don't stay offensive coordinators very long. They end up going to head coaches or whatnot. It's the fact that you can make one formation with the same personnel grouping do so many different things out of it. Sean McVay is a good example. Now, even he gets caught up in running the same stuff again, but because he variances off of it enough, it makes it a little bit harder to defend. If you're going to do something, especially that you don't do a lot of, which in the Steelers' case in 2020 was putting a fullback on the field, you have one success with that. You caught him by the element of sort. The first time he used him, it was brilliant.
Sure,
correct?
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I guess in a vacuum, I didn't love the idea of Derek Watt getting the ball in 3rd and 1, but it worked, and so and that's fine.
But if you ended it right there, and the conversation was, what did you think about the Derek Watt lead on that short yardage situation? What is your reaction?
Yeah, it's hard to be mad at. You say it worked. It was unexpected, and kudos to them. They converted in an area where they struggled, and good job.
All right, and then obviously your next instance of it becomes very results biased. We're not talking about. We might question, or each of us might sit home and say, "Man, I can't believe they got away running the same damn thing again. Got another first down with that, But we're probably not having a 10-minute conversation about it on a podcast if he picks it up there. However, when it fails, and then you go back and you get inside the All-22, you say, "My God Almighty, why the hell did he do that again?" Then you get into the old. Well, see, we told you. We told you he's so damn predictable.
Sure, but a good OC that can create constraint plays, because there's a fake pitch element on that play, and they did it on the first play. The Browns didn't respect it.
Damn crack toss off of it or something.
Yeah, well, you could just run the same exact thing. The difference between a brilliant play call and the predictable is on the second play, don't give it to Watt, fake the dive to Watt, then pitch it out to Snell. That's a great way to have something work off the play you ran before. That's the mark of really good. It's like a double move. You run the out 5 times and you finally hit the out and up, and the defense bites and you get the big play. It's the same idea here. So that's a difference. It's a small thing, but if you call the pitch instead of the dive, then you got a big play and the defense is fooled. If you just give it to Watt again, then the defense, because they're expecting that, they blow it up. And they did.
Look, and one play was not the root of the Steelers' short yardage issues, which they were great in 2020.
They were dead last and they were about dead last year. And the terrible starts have been well documented and abysmal, and that is, I think, partially a reflection of coaching. And those are the biggest, most valid criticisms of Randy Fichtner I think you can come up with.
Okay.
Anyway, I didn't mean to go back on the Fichtner stuff, but yeah, I don't have a whole lot else from the Browns game right now, other than just how ugly and depressing it was. Anything else you want to go with from news of the day, site stuff of the day, Dave?
Let's talk real quick about Tyson Alualu.
Yeah, you laid out a game plan to get him back on the team, which I think we both agree is really important, but also without breaking the budget, which is equally important for the Steelers right now.
Right. Obviously in the new CBA, there is something called a 4-year qualifying contract, and I have a full breakdown of that on the site, along with the language of a 4-year qualifying contract under this benefit is a 1-year deal with a base salary of up to $1.25 million more than the minimum base salary for said player. However, if a team does sign 2 players to a qualifying contract, 4-year qualifying contract, it can only give a combined $1.25 million in additional base salary between the 2 deals. So you've got basically $1.25 million that you can work with there and not be charged with against your cap. In additional base salary between the 2 deals. Under such agreements, only the applicable minimal base salary, not the $1.25 million benefit, is charged against the salary cap. So in essence, you could give Alualu the minimum for his years in the league, okay, which I believe for him next year would be $1.075 million, I believe. You could give him the minimum signing bonus for such a deal, which is $137,000, and then also give him that $1.25 million on top of it. That you're not charged up against your cap, and thus you are paying him $2.4625 million for a 1-year deal to end his career as kind of a go-between guy, kind of the same role, maybe a little bit lesser, hopefully, if your young defensive tackle Carlos Davis comes along, to make sure you have some experience, depth over the nose there in a guy like, and obviously, guy that can play defensive end for you as well too there. For the low cap price of $1.2125 million there. So I think if they want Alualu back, if Alualu wants to come back, if he feels like that's a pretty fair, he might find a team maybe wanting to pay him $3 or $4 million. Who knows? But if he's willing to accept $2.325 million for one more ride, I think that's a fantastic way to get him re-signed that won't kill you against the cap.
Agreed. And a really important name. We talked about all the free agents of Dupree and Sutton, Hilton, Villanueva, Juju, those guys dominate the headlines, but Alualu is a really important piece in that middle without really anything behind him. Because Buggs has been a disappointment. Davis, I don't know if he's ready to make that jump. Probably not. So he had a really strong year. Dude's found the fountain of youth. He's healthy. He's available for most of his career. Dealt with that knee injury a bit this year, but just missed one game. I think it's pretty critical to bring him back.
And I like that idea. We'll see if the Steelers and Tyson Alualu feel the same on that. But there's some comments in this post I just recognize that people really down on. Some people, I guess, down on Tyson Alualu. I don't understand why. Do I want him out there 40 snaps a game? No.
No. Yeah.
But, as far as base situations, especially if he's over the nose and stuff like that, man, he's 33 going on 23 at certain points during this season. He is what he is, but he can also be that stopgap guy to either to help you bring Carlos Davis along, or if you draft another defensive tackle or five tech or whatever there. So it's hard. That's what. Look. Is Buggs going to make this? Can we guarantee to people right now that Isaiah Buggs is going to make the 2021 team?
Nope.
No, we cannot. Can we guarantee people listening to this podcast that Carlos Davis is ready and raring to go to be that guy in the middle of that defense in 2021?
Nope.
All right, so somebody got to play in the middle there, and it's not going to be you. You're undersized.
What about Henry Mondo?
Nope. Right?
So probably not. But those guys will make the team. Obviously, we'll see what Wormley's status is as well. But yeah, Alualu played well. You're going to be losing a lot of guys. He's a cheap option to bring back, retain some continuity there. That's important. You do it.
Right. So we'll see what happens there. I thought, at least to me, I'm a nerd. I thought that was going to be an interesting post.
Yeah. No, I liked it. I definitely enjoyed it. I think it's a good route for this team to take. All right, Dave, anything else, or we can move on to reader emails and close out today's show?
Okay, let's get to the email machine here. And before we do, listen, we get a lot of you that email questions to the show. A lot of you, and especially right now that the season has ended, we appreciate that. But you got to help me out here. People say, "Well, I sent you an email, you didn't read it," and we get such a volume. We can't just spend a lot of times we spend 30 minutes, I think, on these things. But we just can't continually to do that, especially if you have like 4 long questions that take Dave. Look, I'm not the brightest candle on the cake, nor am I the best reader or public speaker. If you haven't figured that out yet, welcome to the show. So you can really help us out by sending maybe one specific question, or if it's going to be 2 questions, make them very, very short and to the point. It really helps us move the show along well, and it lets us answer more of these email questions or comments that we get as well too. And also, if I miss your email or I don't read on one show, by all means, go ahead and resend it to me again, okay? Because these things can tend to get buried down in here. Because once again, man, sometimes I'll get 20, 30 of these things, in between shows there. So with that, let's start knocking them out here. Jeff Berg, fungible running backs and tight ends. I agree for the most part with Dave's fungible running back stance. The thing that makes me buck that thinking is Chubb and Dobbins, Edward Hilaire scenarios. If you draft them high and they are productive for 3 or 4 seasons, you win playoff games or championships in part due to their play, then it's worth it. Yes, maybe you have to dump them after year 4, but it didn't cost you a giant contract and you won big games. With regard to tight ends, it is so frustrating this organization can't put at least 2 good tight ends on the field, while teams like the Browns and Ravens have 3 or 4. Is it a scouting failure or a coaching failure? Looking forward to the best offseason coverage in the business. Thanks, Jeff. Look, everybody should know how I feel about running backs, and it's not that I don't like running backs. I feel it's a very fungible position, and because of the attrition that happens at that position, maybe not the rookie years, but not too soon after it, and losing out, having a 5th-year option on a guy is pretty huge in today's CBA landscape, I feel. So not, going into it, sure, you want to win. You want to win right out of the chute with these guys. And I get the point, Jeff, that, okay, you draft a guy, let's say Najee Harris and all, and he comes right in and man, the running game's great. He stays healthy for the first 2 seasons. You make a playoff run. That's great and fine, but what happens to the investment? What is the probability that guy is the next guy? Look, Edwards-Helaire already missing time, right? So I mean, he's proven my point even for me right there a little bit there. Chubb was a 2nd round guy, was he not? And what round was Dobbins drafted in?
He was 2nd or 3rd, I believe.
Okay, so look, I once again, I don't have a problem. I acknowledge the fact that this team needs to draft another running back probably again this year. All right, 4 years running. I believe in a row there. I acknowledge that fact. My main concern is spending the 1st round draft pick out. I think you could probably get a quality guy, a Dobbins, a Chubb, or whatnot, if you do your homework right, in potentially a 2nd round type scenario there. So, and once again, I just feel that the running back position is fungible as a whole, and it's more of a collective. The Derrick Henrys out there are few and far between. I wouldn't be surprised if Derrick Henry falls off the cliff this next season because of the amount of work he's gotten.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that running back is a valueless position. Value is a relative term, and almost every other position has more value. In your 1st round picks, you want to get them to a 2nd contract, and that's been the MO for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is do your best to get those guys to a 2nd deal. It doesn't always happen, but that's the intent. And with the running back, you're kind of admitting that's probably not going to happen, and so that's where you lose some of that value. Just not to sidebar too much, Dave, and I don't want to do a whole Thad Moss thing I did last year, but I think they're going to draft one of these Alabama linemen. They're drafting somebody from Alabama, whether it's Harris or, I think Deontay Brown, the big left guard, or Landon Dixon, that center. One of those guys I think will look pretty good in black and gold.
Okay, I'm just barely starting to scratch the surface. I imagine you are as well, too.
Yep.
I don't think Dane Brugler's got Mac Jones coming to the Steelers in the 1st round. I've just scratched the surface on him, and I don't know about that. But I don't like to speak on a lot of these kids just yet because, I haven't got it. It's amazing how much we'll learn in the next 6 weeks here. We act like we did it all season long come that time. But, man, I'm just barely scratching the surface on just a few of these names. Look, Najee Harris is a fine back from everything that I've seen so far. And that's the other aspect about a running back in today's NFL, especially if you're going to spend a high draft pick on him, in my opinion. Man, he better be able to do it all. He better be able to run inside, outside, better catch the ball, better be able to pass protect. Because
I think he can do that.
And I think he can. I didn't say, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right,
I think he can. But once again, I have not contextualized him. I mean, I'm going off basically a lot of highlight packages right now with him. And times where I've looked up when Alabama's playing and watched a quarter of play or whatnot. So, I just think the running back position is fungible overall. I'm not opposed to them drafting one like I was last year, but even so, the McFarland since pick made sense when they got him, and what his tape showed. Now we'll see if there's anything there a little bit more. Look, this was his freshman, this was his junior year in college per se. So we'll see how far along they can bring him next season. But even so, he's not going to be an every down back for you by any stretch of imagination. What do you think about Jeff's thoughts on the tight ends?
Yeah, I was just going to address that and say, just look at the lack of investment in the position from a draft standpoint. They've done a lot of free agency and trades with Ladarius Green to Vance to Ebron. But if you want to have guys returning and not this revolving door, you got to draft it. That's been Pittsburgh's MO, and they have not drafted tight ends early. I've said this stat a million times. I'll say it a million more before April. The last time I took a tight end in the top 3 rounds was Matt Spaeth in 2007. So when you draft a bunch of 5th round picks and, Jesse James worked out, I think, well enough. But overall, when you don't draft and invest in the position, those guys don't tend to stay around too often.
All right, now here are the 8 teams remaining in the playoffs: Rams, Packers, Ravens, Bills, Browns, Chiefs, Buccaneers, Saints. What do you think about the running games? Overall, how many of those guys have? How many of those teams have rookie, legitimate, 1st round guys leading the way in the backfield, or even former
rookie?
1st round guys, I guess.
Yeah, you could look at the list. Trying to think who comes to
Obviously,
mind.
the Saints, right? Where was what's his name drafted?
Kamara in the first round?
Kamara. Where was Kamara drafted?
I think Kamara was a first-round pick. No, because he was a backup at Tennessee, and he never really got a chance. He was a third-round pick.
Okay.
Right.
It took you a while, but you got it.
Yeah, well, I knew it wasn't the first. I just was trying to remember where he was selected.
All right. Well, who else sticks out on those 8 teams at the running back? Chubb, second round, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's Chubb, Aaron Jones. I don't even know where Aaron Jones was not a first-round pick. I think he was like a fifth-round pick or something.
And
so yeah.
Am I making and the Bills?
Singletary was a mid-round guy, and Moss was like a third-round guy. So yeah, I think your point's abundantly clear.
Okay. The defense rest. Tyler writes in, how much cap space would cutting Joe Hayden save? That would be, I believe, $7 million. I asked because I'd prefer to keep both Sutton and Hilton over Hayden. Hayden may be a bit better right now, but he is only playing for another year or two. Sutton and Hilton still have quite a while left and can be built around along with Nelson. If cutting Hayden can free up cap space to do so, why not? And Sutton deserves starting time anyways. Let me know if the logic is faulty, since I haven't heard anyone talk about that idea yet. It's obviously, I think, a plausible discussion to have with Hayden, but is Sutton an immediate upgrade, at least in 2021, over Hayden?
The concern for me there is more about the trickle-down effect than it would be, Hayden to Sutton. I don't think in coverage there's a significant drop-off. I think in run defense you lose a little bit, but it's just about Sutton's versatility and ability to play sub-package and stuff like that where you would really feel that loss, but it may be inevitable no matter what you do, because if you lose a Sutton or lose a Hilton, then you're equally going to be looking to find those sub-package type players. So I don't know if that changes things too much.
And Hilton's, Hilton's Hilton. He's a slot guy. He's not going to play outside. Right. So Hayden's Hilton, and I get where he's coming at. Keep both Sutton and Hilton. I understand what he's saying. And yeah, but if you had that $7 million to go toward a first-year cap hit on both of those, on both Sutton and Hilton, it's not going to cover it all. But, of course, it would take a bite out of it, right? So I understand it. Todd, I understand where you're coming from, and it's probably one of those many discussions that the Steelers are going to have this year if they want to put together a team that they think can compete, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I'm more inclined to keep Hayden that final year at $7 million.
Yeah, I think it's just the reality of it. I mean, if someone could wave a magic wand and say, if I cut Joe Hayden, I get both Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton.
How about cut Eric Ebron and bring back one of those guys?
Yeah. Or always hypothetical. If I could bring back both, I mean, that was, I think, the question. I mean, I would probably do that, but I don't think that's actually a plausible path.
But we get it, and I don't. I mean, is it unthinkable to consider that Hayden could potentially be a cap casualty?
No, but the plan better be to make sure we're signing one of those corners. I mean, that's got to come first, I guess, and then Hayden's the effect of that.
And we have a great breakdown Tyler Wise did on James Pierre from the game the other night. But I mean, it's such a small sample size, you can't draw any hard conclusions from that.
No, it's encouraging. I mean, made the roster, undrafted guy. There's some promise there, and equally some disappointment in Justin Lane. But Pierre is not going to be your starting left corner next season.
Marlon writes in, David Knox, thank you for your elite coverage regarding the Steelers. I've been a long-time listener for years, and you have the most detailed analysis, hands down. Thank you for that, Marlon. That's the type of praise that we like hearing there. Since the standard is the standard, and the Steelers are not in the business for a rebuild in 2021. If you were Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin, what would you do step by step to put the Steelers in position to win the Super Bowl in 2021, assuming the cap stays flat? Coaches, personnel, etc. This may turn into one big podcast, but interested in your thoughts. Look forward to hearing your answer. Good question, Mark. Look, in a nutshell, I think I would go to Ben and say, look, you want to return? Okay, you can return, but you got to do things our way, and even if that means us changing out Randy at offensive coordinator for whoever, That's segment number one, because I think Ben can still, especially if you have a running game. I think if you go back to 2010, Ben, or to 2010, 2008 Steelers, in other words, really, concentrated on doing things off of the running game, not necessarily the running game, but having success so Ben doesn't have to throw the ball around the yard 45 times a game. I think that's number one offensively there. Number two, you got to keep as much as of this defense intact. So within that, I'd say, look, Ben, 2021's it, brother, and here you go. Here's an extension with 4 false years, with options on your end to opt out for you here. This will you're not going to get any new money. You're going to get that $19 million that we promised to pay you when you sign your extension. 2021 though is your last hurrah, and what we're going to do is we're going to use some of that money. And with Marlon already told me the cap's going to be flat, so I'm working off that assumption. I think that with some restructures and a key 2 or 3 cap casualties there, I think I could put some semblance, re-sign some defensive guys that give me a chance on defense.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. I mean, the question is too broad, and we'd be here forever, and I'm still trying to figure out my thoughts. Starting with, is this still a Super Bowl team? That's maybe the first question to address. But in terms of the move to make, I just know that if you just keep making those minor tweaks around the edges and a little change here, a little change there, you're going to keep getting, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, and you're not getting good enough results right now.
Todd Bay's right in. I'm sending this as the news is breaking about Colbert and the Lions. Obviously it is 100%. But if he leaves, it could be a signal the rebuild is on. I wonder if Todd regrets sending this email now. I know you can do this with every team, and he sure has had success in drafting wide receiver. But here are big misses: Zach Gentry and Sutton Smith over David Long Jr., Edmonds over Darius Leonard, Mason Rudolph over Mark Andrews, Dave's favorite Dobbs over Kittle, Burns over Xavier Howard, Sean Davis over Kevin Byard. I tried to point out the examples that were just a handful of picks later, and all areas need when players were drafted. And some of these misses caused him to reach in later years and make trades costing other picks. I just would like to hear your thoughts on this. Thanks again for your great coverage. Look, Zach Gentry and Sutton Smith over David Long Jr. I mean, anytime you're getting past, obviously, look, it will forever burn my heart. Dobbs over Kittle. All right, that will never go away for me. But when you get into and I said this earlier in the show, did I not? You get past that 4th round, man. It's hard to go through past 4th rounds and say, oh man, he whiffed here. If you're going to do that, you got to give a lot of credit on the undrafted free agents too, that have hit over the years with this team. And there's been a lot of them, So if you're going to slap them around for those misses after the 4th round and all, you got to make sure that you prop them up for the undrafted. And some of the guys, look, Antonio Brown, 6th round draft pick. All right. You got to prop guys up in that aspect of it too. I think totality-wise, I think Kevin Colbert has done an excellent job, not only in when it comes to drafts, but free agency. Somewhat. I mean, obviously he's limited what they're going to do with the Steelers mantra and what they try to accomplish, and just the Steelers way, if you will, when it comes to free. Was Mike Mitchell a big swing and miss for what they paid him? Yeah. Was Ladarius Green? Yeah. But let's also look at the Tyson Alualus and some of these other kind of lower levels. The James Ferriers, kind of situations as well too. I get it. It's easy to cherry pick these things, especially after what has happened this past season there. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find as good a GM, I think, as the Steelers have had in Kevin Colbert.
I think you summed that up extremely well, and I think you can criticize Colbert for the misses. I did a whole bust series last year. I'll probably do it again, pick it back up this summer, but it's a whole lot easier to draft 3 years after the facts than it is at the current time. I think you can play that game, as the reader said, for any team, any situation.
All right, Berkey writes in, love your discussions involving Cap. Dave does a fantastic job explaining, and I'm one that loves hearing the numbers. However, I think we may be overestimating market value quote unquote, on the current players. If this cap ends up at 175 million, we're going to see a severe downturn in market value. We're going to see very few players receive franchise tags because these represented the market as it was. In my opinion, one of two things are going to happen to players like Juju, Hilton, Alejandro Villanueva, etc. They'll have to take under market value with the Steelers, or be thrown into a huge pool of free agents because most teams will be faced with severe cap issues. They'll be risking being victims of supply and affordable demand. It's going to be bad for the players, but just maybe the Steelers will be able to retain one or two more of those players than we think. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this possibility. Also, would love to see a rundown of the AFC playoff teams' cap numbers and possible cap casualties. We'll do that later. We'll do that, playoff teams and cap casualties, on another podcast. It's too much to get to now. I get the overall, Berkey, the thought on if the cap comes in at a floor at 175 million, what's it going to do to market values? Even so, you're still going to have teams out there with cap money to spend, okay? And then you have to look at, where do some of the Steelers' current top soon-to-be free agents rank? Will they rank league-wide as far as top? And I'm willing to gather that the guys like Juju, we'll see what happens with Bud. He's got a unique situation here, Bud Dupree. Mike Hilton. Who else is that top echelon? Alejandro Villanueva. It's the age-old response. All it takes is one team. And those guys, if you look around, and because they are Steelers, and because certain teams will sometimes, we've seen it in the past, overpay for Steeler free agents, I think there's a possibility. Now, who is really going to affect if the cap comes in at 175 million is what I've said previously. That middle class player, and for lack of a better example, the Vince Williams of the world. That guy, 28, 29, 30 years old, good player, not all pro, not Pro Bowler, that's making that middle tier salary there.
Right. The NFL will always keep its stars because they're the stars. They're the drivers of the team, the face of the franchise, and they're going to keep the cheap veterans in the rookie class because they're cheap veterans in the rookie class, and that hollows out the middle class. And I think that's an accurate way where that's going to go. Some teams will still have cap space. Not every team is up a creek like Pittsburgh. The Jets, I think, for example, have like $100 million in cap space. I think even the Colts as well. So there'll be market for those guys. And if you have young players like a Juju or a Dupree or a Hilton on the market that, don't come along too often, guys in the prime that are playing well, those guys are going to get paid.
Let me go one step further with this as well, too. Let's say the market value for Hilton and Sutton isn't overly great, at least not what maybe some of the numbers that we potentially thrown out there. Why would you lock yourself up on a 2 or 3 deal this offseason if you had expectations that the cap would potentially correct,
sure,
past 2021? So then you're saying, okay, well, the market's not where I want it to. I'll take an under market 1-year deal from a team out there and then play good and then re-enter the market next offseason. All right. So if that's your train of thought, how many 1-year deals for even slightly under market value will the Steelers be able to afford? Because that's not the way the Steelers do business anyway. They like to kind of re-up a lot of these higher free agents that they like for more than 1 year, so they can spread the cap hit out on it. Does that make sense, Alex?
Sure. And to answer your question, it'd be basically none in terms of the higher level guys.
I mean, say a guy like Mike Hilton can't get the, I don't know, throw a number out there, $7 million. On a lucrative deal. Maybe he has to settle for $5 million. Okay. The Steelers aren't going to do a 1-year, $5 million deal with him, I don't think. Unless they picked up the Roethlisberger money and the cap came in at $198.2 million. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I do. Yeah, you can't do those 1-year deals because you can't spread the money around, and that's been Pittsburgh's philosophy because they're always tight against the cap.
All right, one more from Jonathan Mason. Alex and Dave, how does Dulac know that Tomlin called all of the defensive plays in the Browns' loss? I thought when Tomlin does call plays, he typically has a card in his hand. I didn't notice that for this game against the Browns. To that end, are the Steelers' struggles versus empty sets just a Steelers thing, or is it league wide? Alex did a great video showing examples of how the Browns exploited it, but I noticed that on that critical 3rd and 2, Cleveland didn't break the huddle until 10 seconds left on the play clock, knowing they would get that matchup and the Steelers wouldn't have time to react and switching to something. Thank you guys for the great work all year long. Steelers Depot is the best, Jonathan. Thank you for the email, Jonathan. Go with that one, Alex.
Thanks, Jonathan. To the latter point, again, I think no team handles empty particularly well, especially the empty at a heavier personnel. The Browns had a good call, I guess, to break the huddle late, but Spillane and Hilton were lined up next to each other. Spillane was on a receiver, Hilton was on a tight end. I think you can make a switch there pretty quickly. It's just a question of, do you want to be schematically limited or personnel limited? I'd rather be schematically limited with better personnel than vice versa. For Dulac, I don't know. I assume that is just his understanding from watching practice and talking to his sources and all that. I agree. Usually you see the play card there. I didn't take a real good look at it yet from Tomlin during the Browns game. So I assume that is just Dulac's informed, speculation that he just can't say outright for whatever reason, although he's been more aggressive about it since the Browns lost.
All right, from Jelani Suleiman writes in, hey, David and Alex, love the show as always. Obviously, hindsight is 20/20, and this sounds results biased, but how much do you guys think resting starters on offense affected them coming out flat in the first half against the Browns? I'm assuming he's saying. I found it similar to the Jacksonville loss a couple years ago when they fell into the early hole and couldn't recover. Looking back now, the offense probably should have kept the momentum going from second half against the Colts, as they really only played one half of great football in the last 5 games. Here's the thing that kind of, the COVID issues sort of forced you sometimes into some of these situations where you didn't have guys. Now, as far as the game specifically there, and when we're talking about obviously some key guys, Roethlisberger, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt, Pouncey, man, if those guys are that far along in their career that they can't take a week off and get it back together the next following week, then you got issues there. I understand the question behind it and all, but on the flip side, it's another hypothetical that we're throwing in there is, what if you play those guys and one tears up a knee or something like that? Then I can't believe they went into the playoffs and they got 2 guys hurt in a pretty much meaningless game against the Browns to end the season.
Right. Or if no one gets hurt in that Week 17 game, but they have the same result in the wild card game, and they get blown out. Then you say, "Oh, they were tired. You should have rested those guys." and it's the same thing. So I understand the question, and I generally loathe the idea of, well, just trust the coaches because they're the coaches and they know more. Of course they know more. That's baked into the cake of this whole thing. It doesn't mean they're immune to criticism. Doesn't mean we can't analyze the situation. But I think in those moments when they're evaluating stuff that's going on Monday through Saturday, the health of the team, who's fatigued, who needs the week off, especially in this COVID year where you had that really early weird bye situation in Week 4. I wasn't going to be on Tomlin too much for any decision he made either way, because he's going to have a lot more information than I do.
You're good at your job. You know what, Alex?
Well, thank you. You are as well.
You just you're trying to butter me up.
You butter me up. Well, you're coming over to my house. So I think you're just trying to make sure you get.
I'm going to teach you how to make a good pork loin while I'm up there. Maybe if we had the time. Do you like pork loins?
I'm going to burn the house down.
Do you eat pork?
Yeah, I eat pork a little bit. It's not my favorite thing, but
what do you like? What's a typical? And bagel bites better not be the question.
Not too far.
What's a typical prepared meal around your place there?
I'm trying to get
at the Kozora Metroplex.
Trying to get a little bit better at cooking. It's not much though. Last night I made pierogies on the stovetop, just boiled them and then microwave like vegetable thing, and sometimes it's fish sticks, or I'll make burgers on the stovetop, but it's nothing too great over here. I'm not Gordon Ramsay.
I'm not either, but I was raised in the South, so I got that going for me there. How about one more? We get so much people say you don't read my email here. Here's one more. This one from Cosmo Moore. What a name, Cosmo Moore. He's from Los Angeles. That sounds like an LA name. Cosmo Moore. Good
stage name.
Good thing my unpaid amateur porn career didn't work out for me.
Okay, all right. You're not coming over my house.
Gentlemen, he called us gentlemen. Yinzers need to forget about Harris. He's talking about, I guess, Najee Harris. Even the best running back needs a good offensive line. How did Henry do this past week? I guess he's talking about Derrick Henry. You build a strong line and a serviceable running back will do well. Remember how well an aging D'Angelo Williams did filling in for Bell when our offensive line was a strength. Fire Ebron. Good day to Yins. Cosmo Moore. Cosmo Moore is not me. That's not my stage name or anything. Me sending an email to myself to support my narrative that running backs are fungible. There. How would you respond to Cosmo Moore in L.A.?
No, I think he's pretty accurate with it. I would rather build the line and have a lesser back than have a lesser line and have a Derrick Henry type of running back. And the teams that can do both are generally the best rushing attacks in football. But I think it starts with the offensive line. Not that the running backs are absolved from that. I think they are going to draft a running back, but I think the focus has to be on the line and the scheme, and the back is one of the more secondary concerns.
All right, one more question. How would you rate today's show on a scale of 1 to 10, Alex?
It was a pretty good show. I think a good 8 or 9. I think we had some good conversations about Tomlin and the state of this team, and there's just that uncertainty with it that kind of makes us, at least him and haw around, just because you don't know what direction this thing's going to go, and that is again unusual territory for this team. But I enjoyed today's show, and I think we kept it under 2 hours.
You get an A+ gold star for that one, brother man. I would have given it an 8 or 9 as well too. It would be a 10 if I wasn't a part of it, but
no, it's a 10 if the train goes by. No train today.
There you go. All right, let's throw that out there. Just give us a quick email. How would you rate today's show on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being fantastic? Just send a quick email with a number in there, and that'll be a good rating system for to keep Alex and I maybe in a good or bad mood moving forward into the rest of this week. A lot of stuff up on Steelers Depot, man. We got recaps of everything Tomlin said today, free agency, film breakdowns. What else do we have?
Yeah, ton of stuff. Some draft stuff we're starting to begin with. Hopefully do some draft profiles starting sooner than later. Recapping Tomlin. I'll have a sack breakdown recap for the year tomorrow. And whatever else comes up, we'll certainly tackle.
I'll be tackling more of the unrestricted free agents here in a post either tomorrow or the next day, so look forward to that. I've already, as I mentioned, got the exclusive rights and restricted free agent post up. You can find up on Steelers Depot as well, too. As soon as these futures are signed, these future contracts, which probably will be 5 minutes after we get off this podcast
almost
here.
4. Yeah, probably.
Then I'll start getting into the salary cap post and all like that. So look, just because the season's over doesn't mean we're going anywhere. Alex and I will continue 3 shows a week for at least for the next couple of weeks here, and then click down to two shows. We'll obviously be discussing news, notes, Steelers, future, and everything moving forward there. So until Friday, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on the Twitter machine at Alex Kozora, at Alex _ Kozora. I should have that by now after all these years. At Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.